I discovered my sister Meredith had sent out wedding invitations listing the family Lakehouse as the venue. The shocking part was that I inherited this Lakehouse from our grandmother 6 months ago, and Meredith never asked permission. I walked into my mother's kitchen to find wedding planning materials spread across the table, with save-the-date cards already printed. My mother casually mentioned they had booked caterers and photographers. My heart raced as I realized my sister had been planning this for months behind my back. The morning Grandma Ruth's will was read changed everything in our family. I sat in that stuffy law office between my parents, watching Meredith drum her manicured nails against the mahogany table. She wore her best dress, the navy one she saved for important occasions, and kept shooting me confident smiles. As the oldest by 3 years, she'd always assumed certain things would naturally flow her way. Our family's attorney, Mr. Garrison, cleared his throat and began reading. The small bequests came first. Jewelry to cousins, books to longtime friends, charitable donations to the local library where Grandma volunteered. Then he reached the part everyone was waiting for. To my granddaughter, Alida Marie Summers, I leave the Willow Point Lakehouse and all its contents, along with the surrounding 20 acres of property. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to sink through the floor. Meredith's face went through several transformations: confusion, disbelief, then something darker that she quickly masked with a tight smile. My mother, Patricia, gasped audibly, her hand flying to her chest. Dad remained still, but I caught the slight nod he gave as if he'd expected this. Mr. Garrison continued reading from a personal letter Grandma had attached to the will. Alida, you spent every summer of your childhood and young adulthood helping me maintain this property. While others came for the parties and holiday gatherings, you came in the off-seasons too. You learned to repair the dock with your own hands, helped me restore the garden after the storm of 2012, and sat with me during the quiet evenings when I needed company most. This home needs someone who understands its soul, not just its value. Take care of it as you took care of me. Tears blurred my vision. Those summers rushed back, learning to identify every plant in Grandma's garden, painting the gazebo, together fixing loose boards on the wraparound porch. While Meredith had been at cheerleading camps and later internships in the city, I'd been here hands dirty and heart full. And this has to be a mistake. Meredith's voice cut through my memories. She turned to Mr. Garrison with her practiced professional smile, the one she used in her marketing job. Surely Grandma meant for both of us to share the property. We're both her granddaughters. Mr. Garrison adjusted his glasses and showed her the documentation. The will is quite specific, Miss Summers. The property goes solely to Alida. Over the next weeks, I tried to navigate the situation delicately. Meredith stopped returning my calls. At family dinners, she spoke around me rather than to me. Our mother began dropping hints about fair distribution and what Grandma would have really wanted if she'd been thinking clearly. I moved some of my belongings to the Lakehouse, planning to spend weekends there initially, while keeping my apartment in town. The first night I slept in Grandma's room, I found her journal in the nightstand. Entry after entry mentioned the special bond we shared, her hopes that I would preserve the family memories housed within those walls. What I didn't know then was that Meredith had already begun telling a different story to our extended family. According to her version, spread through carefully crafted phone calls and social media posts, the will reading had been misunderstood. She claimed Grandma had verbally promised the house would belong to both sisters, but had forgotten to update the paperwork. She posted old photos of herself at the Lakehouse during holidays, conveniently cropping out the dates that showed she rarely visited in recent years. Aunt Caroline from Texas called me one evening, her voice carefully neutral. "Sweetie, I heard about the confusion with the Lakehouse. Meredith says you two are working out a sharing arrangement." "There's no confusion, Aunt Caroline. Grandma left it to me." The pause that followed told me everything. The seeds of doubt had been planted throughout our family tree. Cousin Janet messaged me on social media suggesting maybe I could let Meredith use it for special occasions. Uncle Robert sent a lengthy email about the importance of family harmony. But it wasn't until I arrived at the Lakehouse one Saturday morning to find a wedding planning van in the driveway that I realized how far my sister had taken her alternate reality. The florist was unloading boxes, consulting with someone on the phone about the bride's vision for the ceremony by the water. I approached him, my voice steady despite my shock. "Excuse me, what are you doing here?" He smiled broadly. "Setting up for the Summers Bradley wedding venue tour next week. Beautiful property you have here." "There's been a mistake. No wedding is planned at this location." His face fell. "But I have the contract right here. Meredith Summers' June wedding, Willow Point Lakehouse." As I stood there in my grandmother's garden watching a stranger plan my sister's fantasy wedding on my property, I understood that Meredith wasn't just grieving the loss of an inheritance. She was attempting to take by force what she couldn't accept had been given freely to me. The battle for Willow Point had begun, and I hadn't even known I was fighting it. The confrontation came 2 days later at our parents' colonial-style house on Maple Street. I'd asked for a family meeting, hoping to clear the air before things escalated further. What I walked into felt more like an ambush. Meredith sat at the dining room table like a queen holding court wedding binders spread before her like battle plans. Our mother, Patricia, flanked her right side, their body language creating a united front. Dad occupied his usual spot at the head of the table, newspaper in hand, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Alita finally... Meredith said, her voice dripping with false warmth. "We've been making such wonderful progress on the wedding plans. June 20th is going to be perfect." I set my purse down, slowly gathering my thoughts. "Meredith, we need to talk about this. You can't plan a wedding at the Lakehouse." Her laugh tinkled like breaking glass. "Don't be silly, it's the family Lakehouse. Where else would I get married? It's where Mom and Dad had their reception. It's tradition." "It's my property now. Grandma left it to me specifically." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Patricia's lips pursed into a thin line. "Alita, honey, let's not get caught up in technicalities. Your grandmother was 93 years old. Sometimes elderly people make decisions that don't reflect their true wishes." Her wishes were crystal clear. I responded, fighting to keep my voice level. She wrote a letter explaining exactly why she made this choice. Meredith's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something ugly underneath. Then she recovered, reaching for a folder. "Well, regardless of ancient history, we need to discuss the current situation. I've already sent save the dates to 150 guests. Bradley's family has booked flights from Seattle. His grandmother is coming out of retirement to make her famous wedding cake. You did all this without asking me. I didn't think I needed to ask permission to use our family's property for a family event." She opened the folder, revealing contracts and receipts. "The tent company has been paid. The caterers have planned a menu around Grandma's favorite recipes. The photographer has scouted locations around the property for 2 full days." My hands trembled as I looked at the papers. Thousands of dollars in deposits, all listing the Willow Point address. How could you sign contracts for a property you don't own? Patricia interjected, her voice taking on that disappointed mother tone she'd perfected over the years. "Ownership is just paperwork, Alita. Family is about sharing. Your grandmother would be horrified to see you acting so selfishly." Selfish. The word stuck in my throat. I'm selfish for expecting to have a say in what happens on my own property. Dad rustled his newspaper but remained silent. Classic Dad, avoiding conflict at all costs. Meredith leaned forward, her engagement ring catching the light. "Look, I understand you're attached to the place. I am too. That's why I want to share this special day there. You can be my maid of honor. We'll make it a real family celebration." "That's not the point. You went behind my back, made commitments you had no right to make." "I was trying to spare you the stress of wedding planning," she said, as if she'd done me a favor. "You know how overwhelming these things can be." "You mean you didn't think I'd say yes if you asked?" The pretense finally dropped completely. Meredith's face hardened. "Why would you say no? What possible reason could you have except spite?" "It's not spite, it's my home. I have plans for it." "Plans?" Patricia scoffed. "What plans could be more important than your sister's wedding?" Before I could respond, Meredith pulled out her phone. "Let me show you something. I've been documenting everything on social media. Look at all these comments from family and friends so excited about a Lakehouse wedding. Cousin Amy is flying in from California. Your old college roommate Sarah already bought her dress." She scrolled through post after post, each one cementing the narrative that the wedding was a done deal. The manipulation was breathtaking in its scope. She'd created a situation where saying no would make me the villain in a story she'd carefully crafted. "I'm not the bad guy here," I said quietly. "You never asked, you just took." "Because it's ours," Meredith snapped. "It's always been ours. Just because some legal document says otherwise doesn't change 40 years of family history. That legal document is Grandma's last will and testament, which she signed when she wasn't thinking clearly," Patricia added. "If we contested it—" "You want to contest Grandma's will?" I couldn't hide my shock. Dad's newspaper lowered slightly. "Patricia," he warned quietly. She ignored him. "I'm just saying if it came to that, but it won't because Alita is going to do the right thing." The right thing. In their minds, the right thing was rolling over accepting their version of reality. I thought about all those summers with Grandma, the promises I'd made to preserve her legacy. "I need to see all the contracts," I said finally. Meredith's eyes lit up. "Of course. Does this mean you're considering it?" "It means I need to know the full extent of what you've done." She pushed the folder across the table eagerly. As I flipped through, my heart sank. She hadn't just made a few calls. She'd signed binding contracts with penalties for cancellation. She'd used the Lakehouse address on everything, some documents even listing her as the owner. "Meredith, you've potentially committed fraud. These contracts claim you own the property." Her smile was sharp. "Oh, that's just a misunderstanding. Vendors always assume the bride owns the venue. I didn't see the need to correct them. You need to cancel all of this immediately." "I can't do that." Her voice went syrupy sweet again. "The deposits are non-refundable. Poor Bradley's family would lose thousands. Is that really what you want?" The manipulation was masterful. She'd created a web of financial and social obligations, all designed to force my hand. I stood up, taking photos of each contract with my phone. "What are you doing?" Patricia demanded. "Documenting everything. Meredith, you have 48 hours to contact every vendor and explain the situation. Tell them the venue is no longer available." "I will do no such thing." "Then I will, and I'll make sure they know you misrepresented yourself as the property owner." The room erupted. Meredith accused me of trying to ruin her life. Patricia called me heartless. Dad's newspaper finally went down as voices rose. Through it all, I held firm even as my heart broke. This wasn't how family was supposed to be. As I headed for the door, Meredith's parting shot followed me. "You know what? Keep your precious Lakehouse. But don't think this is over. Everyone's going to know exactly what kind of person you really are." Walking to my car, I realized the fight was escalating beyond anything I'd imagined. My sister hadn't just planned a wedding without permission, she'd declared war. 3 days after the confrontation, I was sitting in my downtown apartment scrolling through my phone during lunch break. My job as a financial analyst at Morrison & Associates usually kept me busy enough to avoid social media drama, but a text from my coworker, Diana, changed that. "Have you seen what's trending locally? You need to look at this now." The link she sent led to a GoFundMe page titled, "Help Save Meredith's Dream Wedding." The header photo showed Meredith in casual clothes at the Lakehouse taken during last year's 4th of July celebration. The golden hour lighting made her look vulnerable, almost fragile. My coffee mug nearly slipped from my hand as I read the description. "Dear friends and family, I never thought I'd have to write something like this. My heart is breaking as I share our story. For generations, the Summers family Lakehouse has been where we celebrated life's precious moments. My parents had their wedding reception there. Every birthday holiday and family reunion happened within those cherished walls. When my beloved grandmother passed, we all assumed the family tradition would continue. I began planning my wedding there, the place where Bradley proposed to me last Christmas Eve. We invested our savings into deposits, believing we were creating memories in the home that raised us all. But my younger sister Alita has decided that family history means nothing. Despite our grandmother's wishes that the house remain in the family for all to enjoy, Alita is claiming sole ownership and has banned her own sister's wedding. She's threatening legal action against vendors we've already paid. My fiancé's elderly grandmother has already booked non-refundable flights from Seattle, expecting to see her grandson married at the place he's heard about his whole life. We're not asking for charity. We're asking for help to save a family tradition and cover the massive losses we're facing from canceled vendor contracts. Every dollar will go toward either securing an alternate venue that can accommodate our 150 guests on short notice or covering the legal fees to fight for our family's rights to our ancestral home. Please help us turn this heartbreak into hope. Share our story. Let Alita know that family means more than legal documents. The fundraiser had already collected $12,000. $12,000. The comments section made my stomach turn. Alita should be ashamed. How can someone be so cruel to their own sister? I know this family, that house belongs to all of them. Greed is so ugly. Meredith is the sweetest person. She doesn't deserve this betrayal. Some people value property over people, praying for reconciliation. Each comment felt like a physical blow. These weren't just strangers. I recognized names of family friends, distant cousins, people from our hometown who'd known us since childhood. Meredith had crafted a narrative so compelling that facts seemed irrelevant. I called my best friend Jessica, who picked up on the first ring. "I was wondering when you'd see it," she said, without preamble. "It's all over Facebook. People are sharing it with angry emoji reactions. How can she just lie like this? Grandma's wishes, ancestral home. She's making it sound like I'm some villain who swooped in and stole family property. Have you looked at who created the fundraiser?" I scrolled back to the top of the page. The organizer wasn't listed as Meredith. It was Patricia Summers, my mother. The room spun slightly. I navigated to my mother's Facebook page. She'd been busy. Post after post about family unity, the importance of sharing veiled references to some people, choosing material possessions over relationships. Each post carefully crafted to build sympathy while painting me as the antagonist. Her profile picture had been updated to a photo of her and Meredith at the Lakehouse arms linked, smiling at the camera. The caption read, "A mother's love means supporting her children's dreams." My phone rang. It was Roger Thompson, my parents' neighbor for 20 years. "Alita, dear, I just wanted to call and say I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding. Your mother explained the situation, but I know you're not the type of person to destroy your sister's wedding over a technicality." "Mr. Thompson, there's more to this story than what's being shared online." Of course. But surely you can work something out. Your grandmother loved both you girls equally. She wouldn't want this division." After I hung up, the calls kept coming, each one following the same pattern. Disappointment disguised as concern pressure wrapped in sympathy. My Aunt Helen from Portland left a voicemail saying she donated $500 because family helps family even when some family members forget that. I opened my laptop and started documenting everything. Screenshots of the GoFundMe, the comments, the social media posts. My analytical brain kicked in, treating this like a work project. I created a spreadsheet tracking donations, cross-referencing names with our family tree and social circles. The pattern that emerged was disturbing. My mother had strategically reached out to family members who lived far away, people who hadn't seen the Lakehouse in years and didn't know about my summers maintaining it with Grandma. She'd focused on Bradley's family, who'd never met Grandma Ruth and had no context for her decision. A notification popped up. Someone had tagged me in a comment on the GoFundMe page. My cousin Derek from Michigan wrote, "Maybe Alita Summers could explain why she thinks she deserves sole ownership. Transparency matters." Before I could respond, dozens of people had liked his comment. Others piled on. "She won't explain because she can't justify her greed. I heard she's planning to sell it to developers. Probably wants to turn it into an Airbnb for profit. None of it was true, but the truth didn't seem to matter anymore. Meredith and my mother had won the narrative war before I even knew I was fighting. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. "Saw the fundraiser. This has gone too far. We need to talk." Finally, someone in my family showing sense. I agreed to meet him for coffee the next morning, hoping he could help rein in Mom and Meredith. That evening, I couldn't resist checking the GoFundMe one more time. It had jumped to $15,000. A new update from my mother had been posted. "Overwhelmed by your generosity and support. Meredith is in tears, happy ones this time. We're exploring all options to ensure this wedding happens as planned. Some have asked why Alita is being so difficult. While I don't want to speak ill of my daughter, I will say that grief affects everyone differently. Perhaps she's struggling with losing Grandma Ruth more than we realized. Please keep our family in your prayers." The masterful manipulation made me nauseous. She'd managed to paint me as both villain and victim, greedy yet unstable. No matter how I responded, I'd look defensive or disturbed. I closed my laptop and sat in the darkness of my apartment. Through my window, city lights twinkled like stars. Somewhere out there, my sister was planning her dream wedding with money raised by destroying my reputation. My mother was conducting a symphony of lies with the precision of a maestro. The Lakehouse sat empty 30 miles away, its rooms full of memories now tainted by this conflict. Grandma Ruth's legacy, meant to be preserved and cherished, had become a battlefield. My phone lit up with another notification. The GoFundMe had been shared by a local lifestyle blogger with 50,000 followers. The caption read, "Family drama that will break your heart. Let's help love win." I turned off my phone and made a decision. Tomorrow I would fight back, but tonight I would mourn the family I thought I had. The law office of Hartley & Associates occupied the top floor of a restored Victorian building in the historic district. I arrived 15 minutes early for my appointment, using the extra time to review my documentation folder once more. Screenshots, contracts, property deeds, Grandma's will, everything meticulously organized with color-coded tabs. Elizabeth Hartley herself greeted me in the waiting area. In her early 50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in an elegant bun, she exuded the kind of quiet confidence that came from decades of legal victories. Jessica's cousin had recommended her as the best property lawyer in the state. "Miss Summers, I've reviewed the initial documents you sent. Let's discuss your situation in detail." Her corner office overlooked the river, morning sunlight streaming through tall windows. I sat across from her massive oak desk, noting the numerous accolades and degrees adorning the walls. This woman didn't lose cases. "Walk me through everything from the beginning," she said, legal pad at the ready. I started with the will reading, explaining Grandma Ruth's specific bequest and the letter she'd left. Elizabeth took notes in precise shorthand, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I reached the part about Meredith's wedding contracts, she requested to see each document. "Your sister signed these as the property owner." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "Yes, some she signed as venue owner. Others list her as proprietor of Willow Point." "That's fraud. Clear misrepresentation with intent to deceive." She photographed each contract with a specialized camera. These vendors entered agreements under false pretenses. They could sue her. "I don't want local businesses to suffer. They thought they were dealing with the legitimate owner." Elizabeth studied me over her reading glasses. "Your compassion is admirable, but it may be misplaced. Let me see the GoFundMe information." I handed over the printed pages, including all updates and donor comments. She read in silence, her expression growing more stern with each paragraph. "This is defamation, at minimum potentially fraud if they're misrepresenting facts to solicit donations. The claim about your grandmother's wishes for the property to remain available to all family members, is there any documentation supporting that?" "None. In fact, I have her journal entries specifically explaining why she left it to me alone." "May I see those?" I produced Grandma's journal bookmarked to the relevant pages. Elizabeth read them carefully, taking photos of key passages. This is excellent evidence. Now let's examine the deed and title transfer. We spent 20 minutes reviewing property documents. Everything was in perfect order, the transfer complete and uncontestable. Elizabeth pulled up county records on her computer, confirming I was the sole owner on all official databases. Legally, your position is unassailable. The property is yours, free and clear. Your sister has no claim whatsoever. However, she leaned back in her leather chair. Public opinion and family dynamics create complications beyond legal ownership. What do you recommend? First, we send a cease and desist letter to both your sister and mother. They must stop misrepresenting ownership and remove the defamatory GoFundMe immediately. Second, we notify all vendors of the true ownership situation, offering them the option to void contracts signed under false pretenses. Third, if they continue their campaign, we pursue legal action for defamation fraud and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The formal legal terms made everything feel more real, more serious. This wasn't just family drama anymore. It was heading toward courtroom territory. What about the money they've already raised? If they've collected funds under false pretenses, that's wire fraud, federal crime. They would need to return every penny or face serious consequences. She made additional notes. I'll draft the cease and desist letter this afternoon. Once they receive it, they have 72 hours to comply before we escalate. We discussed fees, timelines, and potential outcomes. Elizabeth assured me that cases this clear-cut rarely went to trial. Most people backed down when faced with legitimate legal consequences. I left her office feeling empowered for the first time since this ordeal began. The weight of having legal support, of knowing I wasn't wrong or selfish, lifted something from my shoulders. The drive to the Lakehouse took 45 minutes through winding country roads. I needed to check on the property, make sure Meredith hadn't attempted any unauthorized visits. The familiar turn onto the private drive usually filled me with peace. Today, my hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. Something was wrong before I even reached the house. Fresh tire tracks marked the gravel drive, too many to be from my last visit. As the house came into view, my worst fears materialized. A locksmith van sat parked near the front entrance. A man in coveralls was working on the front door tools spread on the porch Grandma and I had painted together 3 summers ago. I parked quickly and approached. "Excuse me, what are you doing to my door?" The locksmith, whose shirt identified him as Gary, looked up with a friendly smile. "Just finishing up the lock change, ma'am. Should have the new keys ready in about 10 minutes. I didn't authorize any lock change. This is my property." His smile faltered. "Are you Patricia Summers?" "No, I'm Alita Summers, the property owner." Gary set down his tools slowly. "Ma'am, Patricia Summers called yesterday, said she was the property manager and needed emergency lock changes after a break-in. She showed me management paperwork and everything." My blood ran cold. "What paperwork?" He retrieved a folder from his van showing me an official-looking property management agreement between Patricia Summers and the Willow Point Estate. The signature line showed my name, but it wasn't my handwriting. The forgery wasn't even particularly good. "This is forged. I never signed any management agreement. My mother has no authority here." Gary's face went pale. "Oh man, I had no idea. She seemed so legitimate, knew all about the property, even told me stories about family gatherings here. Did you already change the locks?" "Just the front door. Was about to start on the back." He began packing up his tools immediately. "I'm so sorry. I'll reverse everything right now, no charge. I can't believe I got caught up in family drama." While he worked to restore my original locks, I called Elizabeth Hartley. She listened to the developments with professional calm that belied the seriousness of the situation. "Document everything. Get a written statement from the locksmith. This is breaking and entering, attempted theft of property and forgery. Your mother just committed multiple felonies." After Gary left profusely apologizing and providing a detailed written account of my mother's deception, I walked through the house. Everything appeared untouched, but the violation felt profound. The home that had been my sanctuary now felt exposed, vulnerable. I installed security cameras that afternoon, paying extra for same-day installation. The technician, sensing my urgency, worked quickly and efficiently. By evening, I could monitor every entrance from my phone. As sunset painted the lake in shades of gold and crimson, I sat on the dock where Grandma and I used to fish. The cease and desist letter would be delivered tomorrow. The locksmith's statement would be added to my legal file. The security cameras would record any future attempts at intrusion. But what they couldn't capture was the ache in my chest, the grief of watching my family choose deception over truth, manipulation over love. Grandma Ruth had left me more than property. She'd left me a test of character, one that was costing me everything except my integrity. My phone buzzed with a notification from the security system. A car had pulled into the driveway. Through the camera feed, I watched my mother and Meredith get out, keys in hand, approaching the front door. The lock they thought they'd changed wouldn't work. Their confusion, then anger, was visible even in the grainy footage. I stayed on the dock, letting them discover their scheme had failed. Tomorrow they would receive Elizabeth's letter. Tonight I would watch the sun set over the water and remember why this place was worth fighting for. The cease and desist letter had been delivered for exactly 4 days when the family cavalry arrived. I was working from home analyzing quarterly reports for Morrison and Associates when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Aunt Caroline from Texas, her perfectly styled blonde hair unmistakable even through the distorted view. I opened the door to find not just Caroline, but a small delegation. Uncle Robert from Chicago stood behind her along with my mother's sister, Diane, from Philadelphia. They'd coordinated a full intervention. Alida honey. Caroline swept in without invitation, her Texas drawl thicker than usual. We need to have a family discussion about this unfortunate situation. They filed into my living room like a jury taking their seats. Caroline claimed the center of my couch designer handbag placed strategically beside her. Robert chose my reading chair while Diane perched on the ottoman, creating a semicircle of judgment. Can I get anyone coffee? I offered buying time. This isn't a social visit, Robert said, his banker's voice cutting through pleasantries. We're here because this family is tearing itself apart. Caroline pulled out her iPad, swiping to reveal screenshots of the GoFundMe page. $28,000, Alida. People have donated $28,000 because they believe in family unity. Doesn't that tell you something? It tells me that Meredith and Mom are excellent at manipulation. Diane clutched her pearls literally. How can you speak about your mother that way? Patricia is beside herself. She called me crying every night this week. Did she mention she committed forgery and tried to break into my house? She was trying to preserve family harmony, Caroline interjected smoothly. Sometimes we have to take unusual steps to protect the people we love from themselves. The condescension in her voice made my jaw clench. Caroline had always been the self-appointed family mediator, swooping in from Texas whenever drama arose, dispensing her wisdom like a benediction. Robert cleared his throat. We've consulted with a family attorney. There are ways to resolve this that benefit everyone. I've already consulted with my attorney, Uncle Robert. The property is mine legally and ethically. Legality isn't everything, he countered. What about morality? What about family legacy? Caroline produced a folder from her handbag with the flourish of a magician revealing a rabbit. We've drafted a temporary usage agreement. Very simple, very fair. You retain ownership but grant access for family events, starting with Meredith's wedding, of course. I took the document, scanning the first page. The simple agreement was 8 pages of dense legal text. I'll need my lawyer to review this. Oh, honey, do we really need lawyers between family? Caroline's smile didn't reach her eyes. Just read it through. You'll see how reasonable it is. Against my better judgment, I began reading more carefully. The language seemed straightforward at first. Temporary access for specific events, maintenance responsibilities, scheduling procedures. Then I reached page 4. Hidden in a subsection about traditional family usage rights was language that would grant Meredith and my mother historical claim considerations and equitable access in perpetuity. Further down, buried in definitions, these terms were expanded to include partial ownership claims based on established usage patterns. This would give them legal grounds to claim partial ownership, I said, looking up at their expectant faces. That's not what it says at all, Diane protested. It simply acknowledges the family's historical connection to the property. By establishing a legal precedent for ownership claims, I may not be a lawyer, but I'm a financial analyst. I know how to read contracts. Robert's face flushed. You're being paranoid. We're trying to help you save your family relationships. By tricking me into signing away my rights, Caroline sighed dramatically. I flew all the way from Houston for this. George had to cancel his golf tournament. We're here because we care about this family's future. Then why aren't you at Meredith's apartment asking her why she committed fraud? Why aren't you at my mother's house questioning why she's raising money through false pretenses? Because they're not the ones being stubborn. Diane snapped, her composure finally cracking. They're not the ones who took advantage of a confused elderly woman. The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. I stood up slowly, anger crystallizing into cold clarity. Grandma Ruth was sharper at 93 than most people are at 30. She knew exactly what she was doing. She left me the Lakehouse because I was the only one who treated it as a home rather than a vacation destination. You poisoned her against the rest of us, Caroline said, her mediator mask slipping. All those summers playing the devoted granddaughter, while the rest of us had actual lives and careers. I had a life and career too. I just chose to spend my vacation time with her instead of on cruises and European tours. Robert stood as well, using his height advantage to try to intimidate. Sign the agreement, Alita, or this family will never forgive you. This family has already shown me their true colors. Forgiveness seems irrelevant at this point. My phone rang, saving me from whatever response was coming. Elizabeth Hartley's name appeared on the screen. I need to take this, it's my attorney. Of course it is, Caroline muttered. I stepped into my bedroom, closing the door firmly. Elizabeth, your timing is perfect. I'm calling because there's been a development. The GoFundMe has been frozen. My associate found evidence that donations were solicited using false information about property ownership and your grandmother's wishes. The platform is investigating. Relief flooded through me. Thank you. That's the first good news I've had today. There's more. 3 of the wedding vendors have already voided their contracts after learning about the ownership fraud. They're willing to testify if needed. When I returned to the living room, my relatives were huddled in whispered conference. They broke apart as I entered their faces, showing they'd been plotting. I won't be signing any agreements today, I announced, or any other day. The Lakehouse remains solely mine as Grandma intended. Caroline gathered her things with sharp movements. You're making a terrible mistake. Family is forever, Alita. Property is just things. Then why are you all so desperate to take this thing from me? Robert helped Diane to her feet, his expression dark. We tried to do this the easy way. Remember that. Is that a threat? It's a promise that actions have consequences, he said. You're not the only one who can hire lawyers. They left in a cloud of indignation and expensive perfume. I locked the door behind them and leaned against it, exhausted. The easy way. As if there had been anything easy about this from the beginning. My laptop dinged with an email notification. Caroline had already sent a group message to what appeared to be our entire extended family. Dear family, we attempted to mediate the Lakehouse situation today, offering Alida a more than fair compromise. She refused to even consider it. It's clear that greed has overtaken family loyalty. We support Patricia and Meredith during this difficult time and encourage everyone to contribute to their legal fund. Some battles are worth fighting. The replies started immediately, each one a dagger. So disappointed in Alida. Money changes people. Poor Meredith to be betrayed by her own sister. I'm doubling my GoFundMe donation. I closed the laptop and poured myself a glass of wine. Outside my apartment window, life continued normally. People walked dogs, joggers passed by, the world spun on. But inside my family, everything had shifted, perhaps permanently. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Heard about Caroline's visit. Stay strong. Truth matters, even when it's inconvenient. One ally in a sea of adversaries. I held on to his words like a life preserver, knowing the storm was far from over. The security alert came through at 7:43 on a Thursday morning. I was in my kitchen, coffee half raised to my lips, when my phone erupted with notifications. Multiple motion detections at the Lakehouse, vehicle alerts, unrecognized persons on property. I opened the camera app with trembling fingers. What I saw made me drop my mug, ceramic shattering against the tile floor, coffee spreading like a dark omen. 3 construction vehicles had pulled into the Lakehouse driveway. Workers in hard hats were unloading equipment. A massive flatbed carried what looked like sections of a dance floor. Another truck bore the logo, Enchanted Events, making dream weddings reality. I grabbed my keys and laptop, calling Elizabeth Hartley's office as I ran to my car. Her assistant put me straight through. They're at the house. Construction crews. They're setting up for the wedding. Don't confront them alone. I'm sending my investigator to document everything. Get there, but stay in your vehicle until he arrives. The 30-mile drive felt like 300. I pushed the speed limit, my hands white-knuckled on the wheel, watching through my phone at red lights as strangers trampled through Grandma's gardens. When I arrived, the transformation was already underway. A man with a clipboard directed workers like a battlefield general. They'd driven stakes into the historic garden beds for tent anchoring. Someone was using a power drill on one of the heritage oak trees, installing what looked like lighting fixtures. I parked at the property line and stayed in my car as instructed, documenting everything with my phone camera. Each violation felt like a physical assault. Those gardens had been Grandma Ruth's pride, cultivated over 60 years. The oak tree was over 200 years old, one of the reasons my grandparents had bought the property in 1968. A familiar silver Mercedes pulled up beside the construction vehicles. Meredith stepped out wearing a flowing sundress and oversized sunglasses, looking every inch the bride-to-be, overseeing her domain. Bradley followed, his polo shirt crisp despite the morning humidity. She gestured animatedly at the workers pointing toward the lake, where they'd apparently planned to build a platform extending over the water. No permits, no permissions, just destruction disguised as celebration. Elizabeth's investigator arrived in an unmarked sedan. Marcus Webb was a former police detective, his presence immediately authoritative. He approached me with professional calm. "Miss Summers, I'll need you to stay here while I document. Don't engage with anyone, no matter what they say or do." He moved methodically through the chaos, taking photos, making notes, recording video. His presence went unnoticed for approximately 10 minutes before Meredith spotted him. The confrontation was immediate. She marched over Bradley, trailing behind like an uncertain shadow. "Who are you? This is a private event setup." Marcus produced his identification. "Private investigator hired by the property owner. I'm documenting unauthorized activities." "Unauthorized, I'm the bride. This is my wedding venue." "Ma'am, you're not the property owner. You have no legal right to authorize construction on this land." Meredith's face cycled through several shades of red. "This is harassment. Bradley, call the police." "Please do," Marcus said calmly. "They'll be very interested in the trespassing and property damage occurring here." While Bradley fumbled with his phone, I noticed something that made my stomach lurch. Workers near the shoreline were pouring concrete. They were actually pouring concrete to create permanent anchors for some kind of structure. Unable to stay silent any longer, I got out of my car. "Stop. Everyone needs to stop right now." Meredith whirled toward me. "Oh, look who decided to show up. Come to gloat. Come to protect my property from further damage. You're destroying Grandma's gardens. That oak tree is on the historical register." "Drama queen as always," she scoffed. "We're making improvements. This place needs updating anyway." "Improvements you're violating about dozen environmental regulations. The shoreline work alone requires permits from 3 different agencies. The contractor with the clipboard approached, looking concerned. "Ladies, is there a problem? We're on a tight schedule." "The problem is you're working on property without the owner's permission," I told him. He looked between Meredith and me, confusion evident. "Miss Summers assured us all permits were in order. We have signed contracts." "I'm Miss Summers. She's Miss Summers. But I'm the property owner and I never authorized any of this." Marcus stepped in smoothly. "Sir, I'd recommend halting all work immediately. You're potentially liable for any damage done without proper authorization." The contractor's face went pale. He pulled out his phone, presumably to call his boss or lawyer. Within minutes, he was shouting orders to stop work. "This is ridiculous," Meredith shrieked. "Everything was approved. Tell them Bradley." Bradley seemed to shrink under scrutiny. "Maybe we should have gotten the permits first, honey." "Permits?" She rounded on him. "We don't need permits for our own family property." "It's not your property," I said for what felt like the 1,000th time. Police sirens in the distance ended any further argument. 2 patrol cars pulled up, officers emerging with measured official movements. Marcus had apparently called them while documenting. The lead officer, Sergeant Davidson, according to his badge, surveyed the scene with experienced eyes. "We received reports of trespassing and property damage. Who's the property owner?" "I am." I showed him my identification and property deed on my phone. What followed was a careful investigation. Statements were taken. The contractor provided his contracts, all signed by Meredith, claiming to be the venue owner. The concrete damage was photographed. The drill holes in the historic oak were measured and documented. "Ma'am," Sergeant Davidson addressed Meredith, "did you represent yourself as the property owner when signing these contracts?" "It's a family property. I have every right." "It's a yes or no question. Did you claim to own this property?" Bradley put a hand on her arm. "Maybe we should call a lawyer." "Now you want to be careful." She shook him off. "This is my grandmother's house. My sister is being spiteful and—" "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to answer the question." The contractor interrupted. "She absolutely claimed to own it, said she inherited it and had all the authority to authorize work. I have emails." The sergeant made notes. "Miss Summers," he said to Meredith, "you're looking at potential charges of fraud, trespassing, and destruction of property. I'd strongly advise getting legal counsel." The workers began loading their equipment, the contractor apologizing profusely to me while shooting angry looks at Meredith. The partially poured concrete would need professional removal. The holes in the oak would require an arborist to prevent disease. The garden damage was extensive but hopefully reversible. As the circus packed up, Meredith made one last attempt. "You're ruining my life over a house. Do you understand that my wedding, my future, everything destroyed because you can't share? You destroyed Grandma's gardens. You drilled into a tree that was here before America was even founded. You poured concrete into a protected shoreline. And you still think you're the victim?" "It's just property," she spit out. "Just things. Not like family." "If it's just property, why are you so desperate to take it?" Marcus stepped between us. "Miss Summers," he said to me, "we have everything we need. I'd recommend leaving now." As I walked to my car, I heard Meredith on the phone, her voice carrying across the violated landscape. "Mom, you need to call the lawyer. The police are here. Alita called the police on her own sister." The twist, the reframing, the eternal victimhood. I drove away from the wounded property, knowing the cleanup would be expensive and time-consuming. But worse than the physical damage was the realization that my sister saw destruction as her right, that she felt entitled to destroy what she couldn't control. Behind me, the Lakehouse stood patient and enduring, scarred but not broken. Like me, it would heal. But some damage once done leaves marks that never quite fade. The meeting with Judge Harrison took place in a small conference room at the county courthouse. Elizabeth Hartley sat beside me, our case files arranged with military precision. Across from us, the court clerk prepared to record the emergency restraining order hearing. Your Honor, Elizabeth began, we're seeking immediate protection for my client and her property. The documentation shows a clear pattern of escalating harassment, trespassing, and property destruction. Judge Harrison, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, reviewed our evidence methodically. Photos of the garden destruction, the forged property management agreement, screenshots of the defamatory GoFundMe, the contractor's statement about Meredith's fraudulent claims, Marcus Webb's detailed report. This is quite comprehensive, the judge noted. The property damage alone is substantial. What are you seeking? A restraining order preventing Meredith Summers and Patricia Summers from coming within 500 feet of the Willow Point property, Elizabeth stated. Also prohibition of any contact with vendors or contractors regarding the property and cessation of all defamatory online content. The judge made notes. Given the evidence, I'm granting a temporary emergency order effective immediately. The formal hearing will be scheduled within 2 weeks. Make sure both respondents are properly served. Relief washed over me as she signed the order. Finally, legal protection with real consequences. Thank you, Your Honor, I managed. Miss Summers. Judge Harrison looked at me directly. I see a lot of family disputes. Few escalate to this level of property damage and fraud. Please be careful. Sometimes restraining orders escalate situations before they improve them. Her warning proved prophetic. The process server delivered the restraining orders that afternoon. By evening, my phone was exploding with messages from family members. I let them all go to voicemail, focusing instead on coordinating with the restoration company Elizabeth had recommended. The next morning, I met with David Chen from Historical Property Restoration. He walked the damaged areas with me, his expression growing more grave with each violation. The oak tree is my biggest concern, he said, gently examining the drill holes. At 200+ years old, any damage could introduce disease or weaken the structural integrity. I'll need to bring in our arborist specialist. Can it be saved? We'll do everything possible. The gardens will take time, but they're recoverable. The concrete removal is tricky near the shoreline. We'll need environmental permits. The estimated cost made me wince, but insurance would cover most of it. David's team began work immediately, treating the property with the reverence it deserved. I was reviewing restoration plans in my apartment that evening when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a process server. Alita Summers. Yes. You've been served. The thick envelope contained a lawsuit, Patricia Summers versus Alita Summers. My hands shook as I read the claims: intentional infliction of emotional distress, elder abuse, breach of fiduciary duty, interference with family relations. She was seeking damages and equitable relief in the form of shared property ownership. The elder abuse claim was particularly outrageous, painting me as someone who'd manipulated Grandma Ruth in her final years. According to the filing, I'd isolated her from family, poisoned her against her own daughter and eldest granddaughter, and coerced her into changing her will. Elizabeth answered on the second ring. I was expecting this. Don't panic. Their claims are baseless. Elder abuse. She's accusing me of elder abuse. It's a common tactic in inheritance disputes. Try to make the beneficiary look predatory, but we have strong evidence to counter it. Your grandmother's journal, her lawyer's testimony about her mental clarity records, showing other family members rarely visited. This is insane. Mom barely saw Grandma the last 5 years except for holidays. Which will prove. I'll file our response tomorrow. We're also countersuing for defamation harassment and the property damage. After we hung up, I sat in darkness processing the surreal turn my life had taken. 6 months ago, I was grieving Grandma, treasuring quiet memories at the Lakehouse. Now I was embroiled in lawsuits with my own mother and sister. My phone lit up with a text from Jessica. Saw the news coverage. Are you okay? News coverage. My stomach dropped. I pulled up the local news website. There it was, third story down. Family Feud Inheritance Battle Tears Local Family Apart. The article was relatively balanced, presenting facts from public records, but the comments section was a cesspool. People who didn't know us debating whether I was selfish or justified. Strangers dissecting our family trauma for entertainment. A follow-up text from Jessica. Don't read the comments. Come over. I have wine and terrible reality TV. But I couldn't move. I scrolled through comment after comment, each one a judgment from someone who knew nothing about those summers with Grandma. Nothing about the love poured into every garden bed, every painted board, every repaired shingle. My laptop chimed with an email notification. The sender made my blood run cold. GrandmaRuthsTruthAgmail.com. The message was brief. You think you've won with your restraining order, but everyone will know what you really are. A thief who stole from her own grandmother's legacy. Watch tomorrow's news. Attached was a photo I'd never seen before. It showed me at the Lakehouse with Grandma, but it had been edited, darkened to look sinister. My hand on her shoulder appeared possessive rather than supportive. The caption read, "The granddaughter who isolated Ruth Summers from her loving family." I forwarded it immediately to Elizabeth and Marcus Webb, evidence of continued harassment despite the restraining order, but the damage was already being done. The photo appeared on social media within hours, shared by anonymous accounts spreading like digital wildfire. By midnight, the narrative had shifted again. I wasn't just the selfish sister anymore. I was the calculating granddaughter who'd preyed on an elderly woman's loneliness. The restraining order meant to protect me had been twisted into evidence of my guilt. Why would I need legal protection unless I had something to hide? I finally turned off all devices and tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw Grandma Ruth's face, her warm smile as we worked side by side in her garden. She'd trusted me with her legacy, and that trust had become a weapon my family wielded against me. The next morning brought exactly what the anonymous email had promised. A morning show segment about inheritance disputes featured our story complete with the manipulated photo and interviews with family friends, who remained conveniently anonymous but painted me as a master manipulator. Elizabeth called before I'd finished my first coffee. I've already sent cease and desist letters to the station. The photo manipulation is clear defamation. We're adding it to our case. How do I fight this? They're controlling the entire narrative. By staying the course. Truth wins in courtrooms, not the court of public opinion. Focus on that. But as I watched my reputation being shredded by people who supposedly loved me, I wondered if winning in court would matter if I lost everything else in the process. 3 weeks after the restraining order, I returned to the Lakehouse for a deeper cleaning project. The restoration team had done beautiful work on the gardens, and the oak tree showed signs of healing, but the house itself needed attention. I decided to sort through the attic, organizing decades of family memories that Grandma had carefully preserved. The attic access was through a pull-down ladder in the second-floor hallway. Dust motes danced in the afternoon sunlight as I climbed up, the familiar scent of old wood and time greeting me. Boxes lined the walls, each labeled in Grandma's careful script, Christmas decorations, 1975, 1980, summer photos, Ruth's wedding dress. I was reaching for a box marked family letters when I noticed something odd. Behind the neat rows of labeled boxes was another container pushed far back under the eaves. It was wrapped in plastic as if Grandma had wanted to protect it from moisture and time. Carefully extracting it, I found a fireproof document box, the kind used for important papers. A yellow, sticky note on top read in Grandma's handwriting, "For when it's needed, truth always surfaces. R." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were folders, each meticulously organized and labeled. The first made my breath catch, Patricia, financial issues. The folder contained bank statements, canceled checks, and correspondence dating back 15 years. My eyes widened as I read. Check after check made out to my mother from Grandma's account, each one noted in the memo line, "Loan for Patricia's emergency. Temporary help for Patricia. Patricia Mortgage Assistance. A handwritten ledger tracked each loan. The total was staggering. Over $200,000 over the years, none of it repaid. Beside each entry, Grandma had noted Mom's explanation: failed business venture credit card debt, helping Meredith with college unexpected medical bills. But the next document made everything clear. A letter from Grandma's bank dated 3 years ago, alerting her to suspicious activity. Multiple attempts to access her accounts online using incorrect passwords. Security footage showed my mother at an ATM trying to use Grandma's card. Grandma's response was attached, handwritten on her personal stationery. Dear Patricia, the bank informed me of your attempts to access my accounts. I've changed all passwords and security questions. Your financial struggles pain me, but stealing from your mother is beneath the daughter I raised. The help I've given you over the years was offered with love, never expecting repayment. But trying to take more without asking has broken something between us. I'm documenting everything now on my lawyer's advice. Not to punish you, but to protect myself. I pray you find a better path. Your disappointed mother, Ruth. The next folder was labeled Meredith Expectations. Inside were email printouts between Meredith and her college friends, messages she'd apparently sent from Grandma's computer during a visit and forgotten to delete. They painted an ugly picture. Grandma's getting up there in years. Mom says the Lakehouse is worth at least $2 million now. Split between us, that's a nice cushion for my future. Already planning the renovations, going to tear out all that dated garden nonsense and put in a modern entertainment space. Mom's working on her. Old people are easy to influence if you know their buttons. A printed screenshot showed a text conversation between Meredith and our mother. Meredith, how did the guilt trip go? Patricia, she's stubborn. Keeps saying the house should go to whoever loves it most. Meredith, then we make sure she sees me loving it. I'll visit more, pretend to care about her boring garden stories. Patricia, good. Alita can't inherit everything just because she wastes her summers playing nursemaid. My stomach churned. But the final document in that folder was Grandma's analysis, written in her careful hand. Meredith visited 4 times this year. Each visit lasted less than 24 hours. She spent most of the time on her phone planning her next vacation. When I asked her to help me transplant the roses, she said she had a manicure appointment. The Lakehouse is a commodity to her, not a home. She doesn't see the sunrise reflecting off the water or hear the loons calling at dusk. She sees dollar signs and Instagram opportunities. My heart breaks for the grandchild she could have been. The third folder nearly undid me. Alita, the true heir. Inside were photos, spanning 20 years. Me at 12, covered in mud, helping Grandma build the raised garden beds. At 16, on the roof, with Grandpa learning to replace shingles. At 22, sitting with Grandma after Grandpa's funeral, our hands clasped as we watched the sunset. Years of birthday cards I'd sent her, each one saved. Printouts of emails where I shared my daily life, asked for advice, sent her photos from my travels. A journal entry from 5 years ago. Alita called today as she does every Wednesday. Patricia only calls when she needs money. Meredith only calls on holidays, and even then it feels obligatory. But Alita calls because she cares. She asked about my arthritis, remembered I was starting new blood pressure medication, wanted to know if the daffodils had bloomed yet. She sees me as a person, not a potential inheritance. The Lakehouse will be safe in her hands. The final folder was labeled Evidence Patricia's Schemes. It contained a printed email thread between my mother and a real estate developer from 4 years ago. Mrs. Summers, as discussed, I'm prepared to offer $2.5 million for the Willow Point property, pending your mother's agreement to sell. My investors are eager to develop this prime lakefront into luxury condos. My mother's response, working on it. Mother is elderly and will eventually see reason. Once I have power of attorney, we can move forward. The developer, the sooner the better. Properties like this don't stay undeveloped forever. If you can't deliver, I'll need to look elsewhere. Patricia, give me 6 months. If she won't sell willingly, there are other ways to establish control over elderly parents' assets. There were more emails, research on conservatorships, bookmarked websites about declaring elderly parents incompetent, plans to have Grandma evaluated by specific doctors known for favorable competency evaluations, all dated within the last 5 years of Grandma's life. The last item in the box was a sealed envelope addressed to me. Inside a letter in Grandma's handwriting, "My dearest Alida, if you're reading this, then the vultures have descended as I feared they would. I'm leaving you not just a house, but a battlefield. I'm sorry for that burden. Your mother's financial desperation and Meredith's entitlement have grown toxic. They see my death as a payday, not a loss. But you see the truth, that every board in this house holds memory. Every flower in the garden grew from love. The documents in this box prove what I've known for years. Patricia attempted to steal from me. She schemed to sell our family legacy for condos and profit. Meredith viewed her inheritance as guaranteed, already spent in her mind on luxury and status. You were the only one who ever asked what I wanted, who listened to my stories, not with impatience, but with genuine interest. You learned the names of every plant, the history of every room, the reason why the dock faces east, to catch the sunrise. Fight for this place, my dear one. Not because of its monetary value, but because of what it represents. The idea that love and care matter more than blood and greed. Some will call you selfish. Let them. They mistake selfishness for strength, generosity for weakness. The truth is in this box. Use it wisely, protect our home from those who would destroy it for profit. And when the battle is over, sit on our dock, watch the sunset, and know that I am with you still. All my love. Grandma Ruth P.S. Check the loose floorboard in my closet. One last gift for the granddaughter who gave me the gift of genuine love. I sat in the dusty attic surrounded by evidence of years of deception and wept. Not from sadness, but from validation. Grandma had known. She documented everything, prepared for this battle, trusted me to fight it. Carefully, I photographed every document before replacing them in the box. Then I called Elizabeth Hartley. I found something. Documents hidden in the attic. Elizabeth, they prove everything. The fraud, the schemes, attempts to steal from Grandma while she was alive. Bring everything to my office immediately. This changes the entire case dynamic. Before leaving, I checked Grandma's closet. The loose floorboard was in the back corner. Underneath was a small jewelry box containing her wedding rings and a note, "For the one who knows that true wealth is measured in memories, not money." I slipped the rings onto my right hand, gathered the document box, and headed for my car. The ammunition Grandma had left would end this war. But first, I had to decide if I was ready to destroy what remained of my family with the truth. The call came while I was sitting in Elizabeth Hartley's office reviewing the documents from Grandma's attic. My phone displayed an unknown local number. "Miss Summers, this is Rebecca Martinez from Channel 6 News. We're running a segment tonight on your family's GoFundMe campaign and the inheritance dispute. Would you care to comment?" Elizabeth motioned for me to put it on speaker. "This is Alida Summers. I won't be commenting at this time. We've already interviewed your mother and sister. Don't you want to share your side of the story?" "No comment, thank you." After I hung up, Elizabeth's expression was grim. "They're taking it public on the evening news. We need to prepare for escalation." At 6 o'clock, I sat in my apartment laptop open to Channel 6's live stream. The segment began with sweeping drone footage of the Lakehouse golden hour light, making it look like something from a fairy tale. The reporter's voiceover set the stage. A family torn apart by inheritance, a daughter's dream wedding crushed, a mother's plea for justice. Tonight, an exclusive look at the Summers family tragedy. What followed was a masterclass in manipulation. My mother, dressed in her Sunday best, sat in her living room, looking every inch the grieving matriarch. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she spoke. My mother's final years should have been filled with family unity. Instead, my younger daughter isolated her, convinced her to change her will. Now she's using legal technicalities to destroy her sister's wedding dreams. The reporter, clearly sympathetic, prompted, Tell us about your relationship with your mother. I devoted my life to caring for her. Patricia lied smoothly. Doctor's appointments, managing her medications, making sure she was never alone, but Alita poisoned her against me, told her I only cared about money. Now my own daughter has a restraining order against me. What kind of child does that to their mother? Meredith appeared next, filmed at what looked like a wedding venue showroom. She held Bradley's hand, the picture of a devastated bride. We just wanted to honor our grandmother's memory by celebrating our love at the family homestead. Generations of Summers women have been married there, but my sister values property over people. The GoFundMe has raised significant funds, the reporter noted. What will happen to that money? Every penny will go toward finding an alternate venue and covering the legal costs of fighting for our family's rights, Meredith said, managing to look noble despite lying through her teeth. We're overwhelmed by the support. It shows that people understand the importance of family traditions. The segment included interviews with distant relatives, all painting me as the villain. Cousin Janet called me cold and calculating. Uncle Robert suggested I had unduly influenced Grandma Ruth. Not one person mentioned the attempted theft, the forged documents, or the property damage. Then came the twist that made my blood run cold. We've obtained exclusive correspondence that sheds new light on this family drama, the reporter announced. On screen appeared the manipulated photo from the anonymous email, the one showing me with Grandma, that had been darkened to look sinister. Sources close to the family suggest Alita Summers systematically isolated her grandmother from other family members. We've also learned that substantial sums of money moved from Ruth Summers' accounts in her final years, all while under Alita's influence. They were taking Grandma's loans to my mother and spinning them as theft by me. The audacity was breathtaking. The segment ended with my mother making a direct plea to the camera. Alita, if you're watching, it's not too late. Open your heart. Let your sister have her wedding. Let our family heal. That's all we want. Healing and togetherness. My phone immediately exploded with notifications, text messages, social media tags, emails from acquaintances who'd seen the broadcast. The court of public opinion had rendered its verdict. But one call stood out. Marina Chen, an investigative journalist from the State Tribune known for exposing corruption and fraud. Miss Summers, I've been following your story and something doesn't add up. That GoFundMe has raised over $40,000, but the financial disclosures don't match your mother's claims. Would you be willing to talk off the record initially? Elizabeth had warned me about speaking to media, but something in Marina's tone suggested she'd already started digging. What kind of discrepancies? Your mother claimed on TV she spent years caring for your grandmother, managing medical appointments and medications. But public records show your grandmother's primary caregiver for medical power of attorney was you, not her. She also claimed financial hardship, but property records indicate she owns rental properties worth considerable money. My pulse quickened. You've been investigating. I always investigate before running inheritance dispute stories. Too many scammers use family drama to fundraise. Can we meet? I looked at Elizabeth, who nodded slowly. My attorney will need to be present. Of course. How about tomorrow morning? That night I couldn't concentrate on anything. The news segment played on repeat online, gathering views and comments. The narrative was solidifying. I was the greedy daughter who'd stolen an inheritance and destroyed her sister's dreams. Around 10 o'clock, Marcus Webb called. Alita, I've been monitoring online activity around your case. There's something you should know. The GoFundMe isn't the only fundraising happening. Your mother has started a separate legal fund through her church, claiming religious persecution because you won't let them hold a sacred ceremony at the family property. Religious persecution. A wedding isn't a religious requirement. She's being creative with the truth. Also, I traced some of the anonymous social media accounts spreading that manipulated photo. They link back to IP addresses associated with your mother's rental properties. She's running a coordinated campaign. The next morning, Marina Chen arrived at Elizabeth's office with a stack of research that would have impressed the FBI. financial records, property deeds, medical documents, interview transcripts. She'd done her homework. Here's what I've found. She began spreading papers across the conference table. Patricia Summers owns 3 rental properties, valued at over $800,000 combined. She's collected approximately $60,000 in rent this year alone, yet the GoFundMe claims financial hardship. She pulled out another document. Meredith Summers works in marketing at a firm that specializes in social media manipulation and viral campaigns. Her colleagues have been actively sharing and promoting the GoFundMe using company resources. That explains the sophisticated media strategy, Elizabeth murmured. Marina continued. But here's the smoking gun. I found records of your grandmother attempting to file charges against your mother for financial elder abuse 2 years ago. The case was dropped when your grandmother decided not to pursue it, but the initial report is damning. She showed us the police report. Grandma had reported unauthorized withdrawals, forged checks, and attempts to access her investment accounts. The investigating officer had noted clear evidence of financial exploitation, but couldn't proceed without the victim's cooperation. Why didn't Grandma follow through? I asked, though I suspected the answer. According to the officer's notes, she was afraid of destroying her family. She hoped her daughter would stop on her own. Marina's expression was sympathetic. Elder abuse victims often protect their abusers, especially when they're family. What are you planning to do with this information? Elizabeth asked. Marina leaned back in her chair. I want to run a full investigation. Not just a puff piece on family drama, but real journalism exposing the financial exploitation, the fraud, the manipulation of public sympathy for profit. But I need more than documents. I need someone willing to go on record with the truth. I thought about Grandma's letter, her plea to protect the Lakehouse from those who would destroy it for profit. The truth she'd preserved in that attic box deserved to see daylight. I'll do it, I said quietly. I'll go on record with everything. Elizabeth touched my arm. Alita, once this goes public, there's no going back. Your relationship with your family will be irreparably damaged. They already destroyed our family when they chose greed over truth. It's time people knew what really happened. Marina nodded solemnly. I'll need to verify everything independently. This will take a few weeks to put together properly. In the meantime, they'll likely escalate when they realize I'm investigating. She was right. Within days of Marina beginning her interviews with banks vendors and family friends, my mother launched a new offensive. Another TV appearance this time suggesting I had mental health issues that explained my paranoid behavior. Meredith started a blog documenting her wedding planning heartbreak, each post more dramatic than the last. But the truth was coming. Marina's investigation would expose their lies, vindicate Grandma's decision, and maybe, just maybe, end this nightmare. The media war they'd started was about to turn against them, armed with the most dangerous weapon of all facts. June 20th arrived with the kind of perfect weather that felt like mockery. Clear blue skies, gentle breeze off the lake temperature, hovering at a comfortable 75 degrees. The ideal day for a lakeside wedding, except for the minor detail that no wedding was authorized to take place on my property. I'd spent the night at the Lakehouse partly to ensure no pre-dawn setup attempts and partly because I couldn't shake the feeling that Meredith would try something desperate. The restraining order had been in effect for 6 weeks. Marina Chen's investigation was nearly complete with publication scheduled for the following week. Desperation makes people dangerous. At 7 in the morning, my security system began pinging alerts, vehicle after vehicle turning onto the private drive. Through the cameras, I watched in disbelief as a procession of cars arrived. Not construction vehicles this time, but a full wedding party. I called the police immediately. This is Alita Summers at Willow Point. Multiple violations of an active restraining order. Please send units immediately. Then I called Marcus Webb, who answered despite the early hour. They're actually attempting the wedding. Looks like it. I count at least 15 cars already. They're unloading flowers, chairs, and arch. Document everything. I'm on my way. Don't engage directly. Let law enforcement handle it. Through my bedroom window, I watched the surreal scene unfold. Meredith emerged from a white Rolls-Royce in full wedding regalia. Her dress was a princess-style confection of lace and tulle that probably cost more than the average car. 6 bridesmaids in lavender followed their movements, practiced and coordinated. Bradley stood near the lake in a classic tuxedo, his groomsmen arranging chairs as if this was perfectly normal. Guests milled about in formal wear, champagne flutes already in hand despite the early hour. Someone had brought a string quartet. My phone rang. Elizabeth Hartley sounded wide awake despite the hour. "Police are en route. Stay inside, doors locked. This is clearly criminal trespass." They're acting like the restraining order doesn't exist. They're betting you won't have your own sister arrested on her wedding day. Don't let emotion override law. She's made her choice. Through the security feed, I saw my mother directing photographers, pointing out angles that would best capture the Lakehouse in the background. The manipulation was breathtaking. Create the wedding photos, first establish the narrative, deal with consequences later. Meredith approached my front door, bouquet in hand. She knocked, then spoke loudly enough for her audience to hear. "Alida, it's your sister. It's my wedding day. Whatever has happened between us, we're family. Please don't ruin the most important day of my life. Open the door. Be my maid of honor like we always planned as little girls." The performance was Oscar-worthy. Several guests wiped away tears. The photographer captured every moment. I remained silent, knowing any response would be twisted. "I forgive you," Meredith continued, her voice carrying across the lawn. "For the restraining order, for the lawyers, for everything. Today is about love conquering all. Please, Alida, let love win." A bridesmaid I recognized as Meredith's college roommate, Sarah, approached with a phone live streaming. "Alida Summers is hiding inside while her sister begs for family unity. How heartless can someone be?" The narrative was being crafted in real time. I was the cruel sister who wouldn't even open the door on the wedding day. The restraining order, the fraud, the property damage, all erased by the image of a bride in tears on what should be her happiest day. Police sirens in the distance changed the atmosphere immediately. Guests looked around nervously. Bradley's expression shifted from confident to concerned, but Meredith doubled down, raising her voice. "Call off the police, Alida. Don't arrest your own sister at her wedding. I'm not hurting anyone. I just want to marry the man I love at the place our grandmother cherished." 4 patrol cars pulled up, officers emerging with practiced efficiency. Sergeant Davidson, who'd responded to the construction incident, surveyed the scene with weary recognition. "Folks, this is private property with active restraining orders. Everyone needs to leave immediately." Meredith turned to face the officers, her performance shifting to tragic heroine. "Officer, this is my grandmother's house, my family's heritage. My sister is destroying our family over a piece of paper. Ma'am, that piece of paper is a legal restraining order. You're in violation by being here, as is Mrs. Patricia Summers if she's present." My mother emerged from the crowd dressed in mother of the bride elegance. "This is a family matter, officer. Surely you have real crimes to investigate." "Violating a restraining order is a real crime, ma'am, as is criminal trespass. Everyone has 5 minutes to clear the property or face arrest." The live streaming continued as chaos erupted. Bridesmaids shrieked about ruined makeup. Groomsmen argued with officers about constitutional rights. The string quartet packed up their instruments with obvious displeasure. But Meredith wasn't done. She collapsed dramatically onto the lawn wedding dress, spreading around her like spilled milk. "This is my wedding day, my special day. How can the law support such cruelty?" Sarah, still streaming, provided commentary. "Watching police destroy a wedding in real time. The bride is devastated. Her sister called the cops on her own family." Through my security system, I watched Marcus Webb arrive, immediately beginning his own documentation. He captured something the wedding party's cameras carefully avoided: the no trespassing signs, the restraining order notice posted at the property entrance, the clear violations being committed. Then came the moment that changed everything. Bradley, perhaps rattled by the police presence or tired of the performance, made a crucial mistake. Not realizing Marcus was within earshot and recording, he turned to his best man. "This is such a mess. I told Meredith we should have just accepted the venue cancellation, but she and her mother were convinced we could force a sale if we pushed hard enough. My firm's real estate division already has development plans drawn up for this place." His groomsman responded, "Still might work. The optics are terrible for the sister. Public pressure could force her to sell just to end the nightmare." "That's the plan. My senior partners are very interested in this property. Waterfront like this, we could build 50 luxury condos easy. Meredith promised she could deliver once they're married, and she has stronger family standing to contest the will." Marcus captured every word. The truth behind the fairy tale wedding, a calculated attempt to force a property sale for development. Bradley wasn't just a love-struck groom, but an active participant in the scheme to steal the Lakehouse. The police began issuing citations. Meredith had to be helped to her feet, her performance of devastation continuing even as she was handed legal documents. My mother loudly threatened lawsuits, discrimination charges, and media campaigns. "You haven't heard the last of this," Patricia shouted toward my house. "The whole world will know what kind of person raises her own sister's wedding." As the wedding party finally dispersed, still live-streaming their tragedy, I remained inside. Through the windows, I watched the last of the cars leave designer shoes and formal wear retreating in defeat. Marcus knocked once the property was clear. I let him in, emotionally exhausted despite never leaving my house. "I got it all," he said, showing me his phone. Bradley's confession about the development plans, the premeditated nature of this whole scheme. This isn't about a wedding or family traditions. It's about money and real estate development. Will it matter? Look at the narrative they're creating. Truth has a way of surfacing. Marina Chen is going to be very interested in this recording. After Marcus left, I walked through the house to the back porch. The ghost of wedding setup remained. A few forgotten flowers, chair impressions in the grass champagne cork near the heritage oak tree. The Lakehouse had survived another assault, but the cost kept mounting. My phone had dozens of messages, some from family members who'd seen the live stream condemning my cruelty, others from friends offering support. One stood out, from my father. "Saw the circus on social media. You did the right thing. Meredith made her choice when she picked greed over family. Your grandmother would be proud of you standing firm. The truth will come out." As evening painted the lake in shades of rose and gold, I sat on the dock where Grandma and I used to fish. The loons called across the water, their haunting sound, a reminder that some things endure despite human drama. Meredith had her wedding story now, just not the one she'd planned. The bride rejected at her grandmother's house, turned away by her heartless sister. But thanks to Bradley's careless words and Marcus's careful documentation, the real story would soon emerge. A tale of greed dressed up in white lace development deals hidden behind family drama. The war for the Lakehouse continued, but today's battle had revealed the true motivations behind my family's campaign. It was never about tradition or family unity. It was about money, pure and simple. And that truth, once exposed, would change everything. Elizabeth Hartley's conference room had become my second home over the past months, but today felt different. Today we weren't playing defense anymore. Spread across the polished table were transcripts of Bradley's recorded confession, Marina Chen's preliminary investigation findings, and a thick folder labeled Countersuit Documentation. Bradley's statement changes our entire legal position. Elizabeth explained, her voice carrying the satisfaction of a chess player, seeing checkmate 5 moves ahead. He admitted to a conspiracy to force a property sale through manipulation and harassment. That's federal territory. Conspiracy to commit fraud, potential RICO violations if his firm was involved. James Morrison, the criminal attorney Elizabeth had brought in for consultation, nodded gravely. The wedding day recording is devastating for their case. He explicitly stated that the marriage was part of a scheme to contest the will and force a sale. That's marriage fraud on top of everything else. I studied the transcript again, Bradley's words in black and white. Meredith promised she could deliver once they're married, and she has stronger family standing to contest the will. What about the GoFundMe? I asked. Wire fraud, James said without hesitation. They collected over $50,000 using false pretenses, claiming financial hardship while planning property development deals. That's textbook fraud. Elizabeth pulled up her laptop. Marina's investigation uncovered more. She found emails between Patricia and the same developer from 4 years ago, the one your grandmother documented. They've been planning this for years, just waiting for your grandmother to pass. The scope of the deception still took my breath away. While I'd been grieving Grandma, they'd been scheming to profit from her death. I want to file countersuits, I said firmly. All of them. Defamation, fraud, conspiracy, property damage, everything. There's more, Elizabeth added. 3 of the wedding vendors have agreed to testify. They're furious about being dragged into fraud. The tent company is suing Meredith separately for the remaining balance and damage to their reputation. Over the next 2 hours, we crafted a legal response that would shift the entire narrative. We weren't just defending anymore. We were exposing a calculated campaign of fraud and deception. That afternoon, Marina Chen called with an update. My editor approved the full investigation. It runs Sunday, front page with online multimedia components. Alita. What I've uncovered goes deeper than just your family. Bradley's firm has a pattern of these schemes. They identify properties through family conflicts, then exploit the situations. How many others? At least 6 in the past 5 years. Elderly property owners, family disputes, and suddenly development deals appear. Your case is the first where someone fought back effectively. The implications made me nauseous. My family hadn't just betrayed me. They'd partnered with corporate predators who specialized in destroying families for profit. Thursday brought the formal filing of our countersuits. Elizabeth hand-delivered copies to the courthouse, ensuring everything was properly documented. By evening, legal notices would be served to Meredith, my mother, and Bradley. But Patricia struck first with her own escalation. A new social media campaign launched that afternoon, this time with professional production values. A website called Justice for Meredith appeared complete with the wedding day footage edited to maximum emotional impact. The tagline, "When Law Enables Cruelty." The site included a donation page, merchandise t-shirts reading "Family over Property," and a petition demanding judicial review of the restraining order. Within hours, it had thousands of signatures from people who knew nothing about the situation beyond the carefully crafted narrative. My phone rang. Jessica sounded panicked. "Alita, they're organizing a protest this Saturday at the courthouse. They're calling it March for Family Rights. A protest over a property dispute. Meredith's marketing firm is behind it. They're bussing in people providing signs, the works. They're trying to turn you into a symbol of everything wrong with inheritance law." Elizabeth, listening on speaker, shook her head. "They're desperate. This is what cornered criminals do. Create spectacle to distract from facts." But the spectacle was effective. Local news picked up the story. The heartbroken bride, denied her grandmother's venue, became a rallying cry for people who projected their own family disputes onto our situation. Facts became irrelevant in the face of emotion. Friday afternoon, as I prepared for whatever Saturday would bring, an unexpected ally emerged. Nancy Patterson, Bradley's former secretary at the development firm, contacted Elizabeth. "I quit 6 months ago because I couldn't stomach what they were doing," she explained over the phone. "When I saw the news about the wedding incident, I recognized the pattern. I have documents, internal memos about targeting family properties, strategies for exploiting inheritance disputes." "Would you be willing to testify?" Elizabeth asked. "More than willing. They destroyed my aunt's family the same way, turned her children against each other over lake property, then swooped in to buy it cheap when everyone was exhausted from fighting." Nancy agreed to meet with Marina Chen, adding another layer to the investigation. The counter-narrative was building brick by documented brick. Saturday's protest materialized exactly as threatened. 200 people gathered at the courthouse, many who'd never heard of our family before that week. They carried signs, "Families before property," "Stop legal abuse," "Justice for Meredith." Meredith appeared in a simple sundress, no longer the elaborate bride, but the wronged sister, seeking justice. She spoke to the crowd about family values tradition, the American dream destroyed by legal technicalities. My mother stood beside her, the picture of maternal solidarity. I watched from Elizabeth's office window high above the crowd. The spectacle was impressive, but something had shifted. Where once I might have felt guilty or doubted myself, now I saw the manipulation clearly. Every tear, every gesture, every word calculated for maximum effect. "Let them perform," Elizabeth said quietly. "Marina's article drops tomorrow. The truth has a way of cutting through theater." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Marina. "Final fact check complete. Story goes live at midnight. Bradley's firm just lawyered up. They know it's coming. Be prepared for blowback." The protest continued for hours, with Meredith giving interview after interview, each one painting me as the villain who chose property over people. But Bradley was notably absent, already distancing himself from the scandal he'd helped create. That evening, I returned to the Lakehouse. The security system showed all quiet, the restraining order finally providing real protection. I walked through Grandma's garden, now healing from the wedding preparation damage. The heritage oak bore scars, but stood strong. At 11:59, I sat on the porch with my laptop ready to watch the truth finally emerge. Marina's investigation went live exactly at midnight, the headline stark and damning. "The Lakehouse Conspiracy: How Developers Exploit Family Grief for Profit." The article was methodical, devastating, and thoroughly documented. Bradley's firm's pattern of exploitation, the forged documents, the financial fraud, Patricia's years of stealing from Grandma, the recorded confession from the wedding day, Nancy Patterson's insider testimony, everything laid bare with journalistic precision. Within an hour, the story was trending. The same social media ecosystem that had vilified me began processing new information. Comments on the Justice for Meredith page shifted from support to outrage, not at me, but at being manipulated. My phone rang. Marcus Webb sounded grimly satisfied. Bradley's firm just issued a statement distancing themselves from him. He's been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The countersuit had become something larger, an exposé of systematic exploitation of grieving families. My story was no longer about one selfish sister denying a wedding venue. It was about standing up to coordinated fraud and manipulation. As Sunday dawned over the lake, I knew the war wasn't over. Patricia and Meredith would adapt, find new angles of attack. But the truth was out, now documented and undeniable. The Lakehouse stood protected not just by legal documents, but by public record of what had really transpired. Grandma Ruth had been right in her letter. The truth does surface eventually, and sometimes that's all the victory you need. The fallout from Marina Chen's investigation was swift and devastating. By Monday morning, the Justice for Meredith website had vanished. The GoFundMe page displayed a notification. This fundraiser is under review for potential violations of terms of service. Bradley's development firm issued terse, no-comment responses to media inquiries, while their stock price tumbled 12%. I was reviewing damage assessments at the Lakehouse when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Aunt Caroline from Texas. "Alida, I owe you an apology." Her voice lacked its usual commanding tone. I had no idea about the development scheme. The article, those documents. Patricia lied to all of us. Yes, she did. A long pause. I donated $5,000 to that GoFundMe. I feel like such a fool. Over the following days, similar calls trickled in. Uncle Robert, his banker's dignity shattered, admitted he'd been completely taken in. Cousin Janet sent a long email expressing horror at being manipulated. The family coalition against me was crumbling as relatives realized they'd been pawns in a larger scheme. But not everyone was ready to admit wrongdoing. Cousin Derek, who'd publicly challenged me on the GoFundMe page, doubled down on social media. One article doesn't change the fact that Alita denied her sister a wedding venue. Family should come before property regardless of other circumstances. The divided reactions created a new dynamic, those demanding accountability versus those still clinging to the family unity narrative. Our extended family split into factions, Thanksgiving plans already being reorganized around new loyalty lines. Wednesday brought unexpected visitors. 3 of the wedding vendors, the florist, the tent company owner, and the caterer, arrived together at Elizabeth's office. "We want to make this right." The florist, Margaret Chen, no relation to Marina, began. "We were lied to, and we inadvertently participated in fraud. We'd like to offer testimony for your countersuit." The tent company owner, Thomas Rivera, looked particularly aggrieved. "Meredith still owes me $8,000. She promised payment after the wedding, claimed the GoFundMe would cover it. Now I learn the whole thing was a scam." "I've been in business 30 years, added the caterer, Angela Morrison. "My reputation matters. Being associated with this conspiracy could ruin me. I need the public to know I was deceived, too." Their testimony would prove valuable, but it was their next revelation that stunned me. "There's something else," Margaret said hesitantly. "Meredith approached us about a month ago with a strange request. She wanted us to inflate our invoices by 30%, said it was for insurance purposes. We all declined." "She was planning to pocket the difference," Thomas added. "Claim higher costs to the GoFundMe donors than actual expenses. That's why she went with different vendors, ones who'd play along." Elizabeth documented everything, adding more evidence to our growing case file. The wedding that never was kept revealing new layers of deception. Thursday's mail brought a certified letter that made my hands shake. The return address was Meredith's apartment. Inside, a single page in her handwriting. "Alita. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. Bradley left me. His firm is threatening to sue me for damage to their reputation. Mom is being investigated for wire fraud. The GoFundMe is frozen. Everything we built has collapsed. I'm moving to California to stay with a college friend and start over. Maybe distance will give me perspective on how we got here. Part of me wants to blame you for not just giving me the venue, but I know that's not fair. We chose this path. I'm not apologizing. I can't yet. Maybe someday. But I need you to know that it wasn't supposed to go this far. It started as simple wedding planning. Then Mom got involved. Then Bradley's firm saw an opportunity. Before I knew it, I was trapped in something bigger than family drama. Take care of the Lakehouse. Despite everything I know, you'll preserve it like Grandma wanted. Meredith." No return address, no way to respond. Just an acknowledgement that she'd lost everything in pursuit of something that was never hers. My father called that evening. "I'm filing for divorce," he said without preamble. "I've already moved into an apartment. 40 years of marriage. But I can't stay with someone capable of what Patricia did. Dad, I'm sorry." "Don't apologize. I should have acted years ago when I first suspected she was taking money from your grandmother. I was a coward choosing silence over conflict. That ends now." Marina Chen's article mentioned evidence you'd been documenting Mom's behavior. "Entitlement." A heavy sigh. "I have boxes of records, receipts, bank statements, recordings of her phone calls planning this scheme. I thought keeping evidence would protect me in a divorce. I never imagined she'd go this far. Would you consider sharing those records with my attorney?" "Already copied everything. Elizabeth will have them tomorrow. It's time Patricia faced real consequences." The investigation into the GoFundMe had expanded beyond family drama. The state attorney general's office had opened a formal fraud investigation. $50,000 raised through false pretenses was serious money. Contributors were demanding refunds, threatening their own lawsuits. Friday afternoon, Marina Chen called with an update. The response to the article has been overwhelming. I've heard from 12 other families with similar stories about Bradley's firm. The FBI is now investigating them for interstate fraud. The FBI. Turns out they've been running this scheme across state lines. Using family conflicts to acquire properties for development is their business model. Your case just happened to be the one where someone fought back effectively. The scope kept expanding. What started as a family dispute over a wedding venue had exposed a corporate conspiracy affecting dozens of families. That evening, I sat in the Lakehouse kitchen when movement outside caught my eye. Through the window, I saw my mother at the edge of the property standing at the restraining order boundary. She looked older, smaller, her usual perfect appearance replaced by disheveled desperation. She was speaking, though I couldn't hear the words, gesturing toward the house, occasionally wiping her eyes. The performance continued for 20 minutes before she finally left. I found her message on my voicemail later. "Elida, I'm your mother. Whatever has happened, whatever mistakes were made, you don't abandon family. The investigators are harassing me. My friends won't return my calls. Your father left me. Meredith fled to California. I have no one. Please just talk to me. Let me explain. Family forgives. Family protects each other. Call me back, please." The manipulation was still there, wrapped in desperation now instead of confidence. Family forgives, family protects, but she'd never protected Grandma from her schemes. She'd never protected me from her lies. I didn't call back. Saturday brought news that the protest organizers were distancing themselves from March for Family Rights. The revelation that they'd been used by a development firm for corporate purposes had embarrassed the legitimate activists who'd been drawn in. As evening fell, I walked through the restored gardens. The heritage oak's scars were healing. The shoreline damage had been professionally repaired. The Lakehouse stood solid and protected, finally free from immediate threat. My phone buzzed with a group text from cousins who'd initially sided against me. "Family reunion planning for next summer. Would you be willing to host at the Lakehouse? We understand if you need time, but we'd like to reconnect away from all the drama. Just family who actually care about family." I stared at the message, processing the shift. The family I'd thought lost was reforming minus the toxic elements. Those who'd been deceived were seeking reconciliation. Those who'd knowingly participated were facing consequences. "Maybe," I typed back. "Let's see where we all are in a few months." The reckoning wasn't complete. Legal proceedings would continue for months, maybe years. The FBI investigation into Bradley's firm would uncover more victims. The fraud charges against my mother would wind through the system. But for the first time since Grandma's death, I felt the possibility of peace. Not with the family I'd lost, but with the family that might emerge from the wreckage. Smaller, wiser, and built on truth rather than manipulation. The Lakehouse had survived its trial by fire. So had I. And sometimes that's enough foundation to build something new. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. 6 months of legal battles had led to this moment. The final hearing on all matters related to the Lakehouse, the fraud and the restraining orders. Judge Catherine Walsh presided, her reputation for no-nonsense decisions preceding her. I sat with Elizabeth Hartley at the plaintiff's table, our evidence organized in bankers' boxes beside us. Across the aisle, my mother sat with her court-appointed attorney. The fraud charges had drained her finances, forcing her to sell 2 of her rental properties to pay legal fees. Meredith's empty chair spoke volumes. She'd refused to return from California to face charges. This court has reviewed extensive documentation in this matter. Judge Walsh began, her voice carrying absolute authority, including evidence of fraud, elder abuse, property damage, and conspiracy to defraud through false fundraising. She turned first to my mother. "Mrs. Patricia Summers, the evidence against you is overwhelming. Bank records show systematic theft from your mother, Ruth Summers, totaling $237,000 over 15 years. The attempted forgery of property management documents, the creation of fraudulent GoFundMe campaigns that collected $53,000 under false pretenses." Patricia's lawyer tried one last defense. Your Honor, my client was acting from a place of family concern. Counsel, I've read the emails where your client discussed selling her mother's property to developers while Mrs. Ruth Summers was still alive. That's not family concern. That's conspiracy to commit elder abuse. The judge continued methodically through each charge. The property damage from the wedding setup, $18,000 in restoration costs. The defamation through social media campaigns, the violation of restraining orders, each item documented, proven, undeniable. In the matter of Alida Summers versus Patricia Summers, this court finds in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. Damages are awarded in the amount of $312,000, covering property damage, legal fees, and emotional distress. My mother made a sound like air escaping a balloon. The number would bankrupt her completely. Furthermore, Judge Walsh continued, the criminal fraud charges will be prosecuted separately. This court recommends detention pending trial as Mrs. Patricia Summers has shown repeated willingness to violate court orders. 2 bailiffs approached my mother. The woman who'd orchestrated everything, who'd stolen from her own mother and turned family against me, was led away in handcuffs. She didn't look at me once. Regarding Meredith Summers, the judge addressed the empty chair. A bench warrant has been issued for failure to appear. The fraud charges stand with additional charges for conspiracy and property damage. Her assets have been frozen pending resolution. Elizabeth had told me earlier that Meredith's life in California wasn't the fresh start she'd hoped for. Unable to access her accounts, abandoned by Bradley and facing federal charges, she was reportedly working retail and living in a studio apartment. The marketing executive who'd crafted viral campaigns now couldn't even use her real name on job applications. Now, regarding the corporate defendants, Judge Walsh's tone grew even sterner. Bradley Morrison and his firm, Morrison Development Partners, engaged in a pattern of predatory behavior targeting grieving families. This court finds sufficient evidence to support RICO charges, which federal prosecutors are pursuing. Through Elizabeth, I'd learned that Bradley's firm had collapsed entirely. Federal investigation revealed dozens of similar schemes across multiple states. Bradley himself faced potential decades in prison for wire fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering. The golden boy with development dreams was last seen entering federal court in shackles. Miss Alida Summers. The judge addressed me directly. This court recognizes the extraordinary pressure you've endured in protecting your inheritance and honoring your grandmother's wishes. The property known as Willow Point is confirmed as solely and entirely yours, free from any claims or encumbrances. The restraining orders are made permanent. Relief flooded through me, though it came with exhaustion rather than triumph. Victory in court couldn't restore the family I'd lost or undo the months of pain. Additionally, Judge Walsh continued, this court orders full restitution of the GoFundMe proceeds to donors to be managed by a court-appointed administrator. Those who donated believing they were supporting a legitimate cause will have their money returned. After final procedural matters, court was adjourned. I stood on shaky legs as people filed out. My father waited in the gallery, having attended every hearing, despite the pain of watching his soon-to-be ex-wife face justice. You did the right thing, he said quietly, embracing me. Your grandmother would be proud. Outside the courthouse, Marina Chen waited with a small camera crew. Her investigation had won a journalism award and sparked legislative discussions about protecting elderly property owners from family fraud. Alida, how do you feel about today's verdict? I considered the question. Validated but not victorious. Nobody wins when families destroy themselves over greed. I just hope others can learn from what happened here. What's next for you in the Lakehouse? Healing. The property and I both need time to recover, but Grandma trusted me to preserve her legacy, and that's what I'll do. Elizabeth emerged from the courthouse looking satisfied. Patricia's lawyer is already discussing plea deals for the criminal charges. She's looking at minimum 5 years, possibly 10 with the elder abuse charges. Meredith will likely get 3 to 5 when they catch up with her. What about the relatives who donated to the GoFundMe? Those who were genuinely deceived will get refunds. Those who knew the truth and participated anyway might face their own investigations. The forensic accountants are thorough. We walked to our cars through the autumn afternoon. The same courthouse where they'd staged protests now stood as the site of justice served. The signs demanding justice for Meredith had been replaced by the quiet dignity of legal resolution. That evening, I returned to the Lakehouse for the first time in weeks, without dread. The security system was quiet, the restraining orders permanent, the property legally protected from any future claims. I walked through each room seeing it fresh. This wasn't just an inheritance anymore. It was a battlefield where truth had won. The scars remained. Gardens showed signs of repair. The heritage oak bore marks from illegal drilling. But everything was healing. On Grandma's desk, I found the last letter she'd written me still in its envelope. I'd been saving it, afraid to read her final words during the chaos. Now seemed right. My dearest Alida, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and the vultures have likely descended. But you're stronger than you know. The Lakehouse isn't just property. It's proof that love, patience, and truth matter more than greed and manipulation. Your mother and sister chose their path long ago. Don't blame yourself for their choices. Don't doubt yourself when they attack. Stand firm in the knowledge that you're honoring not just my wishes, but the values that truly matter. The sunrise over the lake will heal your heart. The gardens will bloom again. And someday you'll fill this house with people who understand that homes are built on love, not legal documents. Until we meet again, remember, you were chosen not because you're perfect, but because you understand what's worth fighting for. All my love, Grandma Ruth. Tears came then, not of sadness, but of release. The legal victory was just paper and pronouncements. The real victory was keeping faith with someone who'd trusted me with everything she held dear. As night fell over the lake, I lit a fire in the fieldstone fireplace Grandpa had built. The house felt different now, not just protected, but free. Free from schemes and lies. Free from false family loyalty used as manipulation. Free to be what Grandma intended. A sanctuary for those who understood its true value. My phone buzzed with messages, cousins expressing relief at the verdict, friends offering congratulations, even some of the wedding vendors grateful their reputations had been cleared. The family I'd thought lost was slowly replaced by people who valued truth over comfortable lies. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, managing restitution, overseeing property repairs, deciding whether to host that reunion for relatives who'd learned hard lessons about trust. But tonight I sat in Grandma's favorite chair watching flames dance in the fireplace and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The Lakehouse was safe. The truth had prevailed. And sometimes that's the only victory that matters. The first frost of October painted the Lakehouse grounds in crystal silver. I stood on the back porch, coffee mug warming my hands, watching the sunrise transform the lake into molten gold. 3 months had passed since the court victory. The legal battles were over, but the real work of healing had just begun. David Chen's restoration team had performed miracles. The heritage oak, which experts feared might die from the drill damage, showed new growth thanks to innovative treatment. The gardens ravaged by construction equipment bloomed with fall asters and chrysanthemums. Where concrete had scarred the shoreline, native grasses now waved in the breeze. "Looking good," David said, joining me on the porch for our final walkthrough. "Your grandmother built these gardens to last. They just needed some help remembering their strength." "Like all of us," I murmured. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. "Divorce finalized this morning, starting fresh at 67, dinner Thursday." We'd grown closer through the ordeal, finding the relationship we'd never quite managed while he was married to my mother. He'd moved into a small condo downtown, decorated it with photos from before the family imploded, and started attending a support group for family members of convicted fraud perpetrators. "Your dad's doing well." Dr. Sarah Chen, my therapist, had noted during yesterday's session. How are you processing your mother's sentencing? Patricia had received 8 years in federal prison for elder abuse and wire fraud. The woman who'd orchestrated such elaborate schemes now spent her days in a gray jumpsuit working the prison library cart. She'd written me several letters, each one a masterclass in manipulation disguised as apology. I'd stopped reading them after the third one. Meredith remained in California arrested 6 weeks after the trial. Unable to maintain her facade without resources, she'd been caught shoplifting designer clothes, the same brands she'd once flaunted. Her public defender negotiated a plea deal 4 years for fraud and conspiracy with possible early release for good behavior. The influencer who'd live-streamed my cruelty now lived in a cell without internet access. But healing meant more than just witnessing justice. It meant rebuilding a life in the spaces their destruction had created. I want to host Thanksgiving, I told Dad last week. His surprise was evident. At the Lakehouse, are you sure you're ready? I need to create new memories there, good ones. The guest list was carefully curated. Dad, of course, Jessica and her family, several cousins who'd apologized sincerely and shown genuine growth, Marina Chen, whose investigation had become a book about family fraud and corporate predation, even Nancy Patterson Bradley's former secretary, whose testimony had helped expose the conspiracy. Not everyone had earned forgiveness. Uncle Robert still insisted the family matter should have been handled privately. Cousin Derek continued posting about choosing property over people, though his audience had dwindled. They remained exiled from the new family taking shape. I'd also made peace with the wedding vendors. Margaret Chen's florist shop now provided weekly arrangements for the Lakehouse. Thomas Rivera's tent company would handle the setup for next summer's planned reunion. We'd bonded over being deceived and had formed unexpected friendships. The sound of tires on gravel announced my first appointment of the day. Through the window, I watched a young couple emerge from a sedan, eyes wide as they took in the property. They were the third couple this month responding to my new venture. Welcome to Willow Point Retreat, I greeted them at the door. I'm Alita, you must be the Johnsons. The idea had come during a therapy session. The Lakehouse feels too big for just me, I told Dr. Chen, but I'm not ready for permanent guests. What about temporary ones? People who need what the property offers? Thus was born Willow Point Retreat. Weekend programs for families dealing with inheritance conflicts, property disputes, and the intersection of grief and greed. I'd partnered with mediators and therapists to create workshops on healthy family dynamics around inherited wealth. We're here because my mother passed 6 months ago, Mrs. Johnson explained as I showed them to the renovated guest cottage. My siblings and I are already fighting over her house. We don't want to end up like my family, I offered gently. That's why I started this, to help others avoid our mistakes. The weekend programs were small, just 2 or 3 families at a time. We combined practical sessions on legal planning with therapeutic work on family communication. The lake provided a peaceful backdrop for difficult conversations. Your story saved us, one participant had written in a thank you note. When we saw what greed could do to a family, we chose differently. I'd also started a scholarship program with the book proceeds Marina insisted on sharing. The Ruth Summers Memorial Fund helped elderly property owners get proper legal counsel to protect their assets from family exploitation. 3 families had already been helped their properties secured against predatory relatives or developers. Evenings at the Lakehouse no longer felt lonely. I'd adopted a golden retriever named Hope from the shelter. She'd been surrendered by a family going through their own crisis. Together we walked the restored trails, her joy at simple pleasures, reminding me that healing happens in small moments. The doorbell rang, interrupting my afternoon of scholarship application reviews. Through the peephole, I saw Aunt Caroline from Texas, looking uncertain. I opened the door cautiously. Caroline, I know I'm probably the last person you want to see, she began quickly, but I've been in therapy since everything happened. I realized I was part of the problem, always swooping in to manage family drama without really listening. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just, would you be willing to talk? We sat on the porch, autumn air crisp between us as Caroline spoke about her own journey. The family mediator learning she'd been a family enabler. The shame of being fooled. The recognition of her own jealousy over the inheritance. I donated to their legal defense fund, she admitted. Even after knowing the truth, I thought family meant supporting each other no matter what. I've learned that's not love. It's enabling destruction. We talked for 2 hours. Not reconciliation exactly, but a step toward understanding. She left with resources about healthy boundaries and a promise to do better with her own children and grandchildren. That evening, I sat at Grandma's desk to write in the journal Dr. Chen had suggested I keep. The entries had evolved from raw pain to processing to something resembling hope. The irony, I wrote, is that Meredith and Mom's actions created exactly what they claimed to want. A family legacy at the Lakehouse, just not the one they envisioned. Instead of a stolen wedding venue or demolished development, it's become a place of healing. Grandma would appreciate that plot twist. My phone lit up with a video message from Dad. He was at his support group surrounded by others navigating family betrayal. "Wanted you to see this," his message read. "You're not alone." In the video, a woman was sharing her story. Parents who'd mortgaged her childhood home without telling her, then expected her to pay their debts. Another man described siblings who'd emptied their father's accounts while he was in hospice. Each story a variation on the theme of family greed overcoming family love. But they were healing, supporting each other, choosing different paths. The ripples from our story spreading in unexpected ways. As night settled over the lake, I built a fire in the fireplace and opened a letter that had arrived that morning. The return address was a federal correctional facility. Not my mother's, but Meredith's. This one I read, "Alita, I won't insult you with apologies or explanations. We both know what I did and why. But I wanted you to know that I've started teaching literacy classes here." Ironic. The woman who crafted viral lies helping others learn to read truth. Prison is what I deserve, but it's also what I needed. No audience, no performance, just time to figure out who I am without the schemes and manipulation. I dream about the Lakehouse sometimes, not owning it or selling it, just sitting on the dock like we did as kids before everything got twisted. I'm glad you kept it safe. Maybe someday I'll be someone who deserves to visit again. Meredith. I folded the letter carefully. Unlike our mother's manipulative missives, this felt real. Broken, hesitant, but real. People could change given enough consequences and time. Whether that change would be enough for reconciliation remained to be seen. Hope curled at my feet as I watched the fire dance. Tomorrow would bring new retreat guests, another scholarship review, Thanksgiving planning with Dad, the work of building something positive from the wreckage. The Lakehouse stood solid around me, scarred but strong, wounded but healing. Like all of us who'd survived the battle for its soul. Grandma's true legacy wasn't the property itself, but the strength to protect what mattered from those who would destroy it. And in that protection, finding the space to heal, to grow, to become more than the sum of our scars. 1 year later, the Lakehouse glowed with warmth on a crisp November evening. String lights twinkled along the restored wraparound porch, and through the windows, the golden light of belonging spilled onto the lawn where Grandma's gardens bloomed with late autumn flowers. The sounds of laughter and conversation drifted across the water as I stood on the dock, taking a moment of solitude before returning to my guests. The Thanksgiving gathering had grown beyond what I'd imagined. 23 people filled the house, not with tension and schemes, but with genuine connection. My father manned the turkey station, proudly wearing the apron I'd given him that read, "Divorced and Thriving at 68. He'd become something of a celebrity in his support group, the man who'd finally chosen truth over comfortable lies. Alita. Jessica's daughter Emma ran down the dock toward me, pigtails bouncing. "Aunt Marina says dinner's almost ready." Marina Chen had become family in all the ways that mattered. Her book about our story, When Blood Turns to Water. A Family Destroyed by Greed had become a bestseller with proceeds split between victim advocacy groups and our scholarship fund. She'd arrived early to help cook, bringing her photographer husband who documented the restoration process. Inside the dining room table, extended to its full length, was set with Grandma's china. Nancy Patterson arranged place cards while her teenage daughter helped pour cider. Nancy's testimony had cost her career in development, but she'd rebuilt as a paralegal specializing in elder law protection. "Best thing that ever happened to me," she'd say, finally using law to protect instead of prey. The cousins who'd earned their way back through genuine accountability filled the living room. Cousin Amy from California had flown in specifically her twin boys, playing with Hope by the fireplace. "I tell everyone about what happened," she'd told me earlier. "How I almost lost my real family to mob mentality. It keeps me honest." Even Aunt Caroline had made the journey from Texas, though her place at the table had been earned through months of family therapy sessions via video chat. She'd become an advocate for healthy inheritance planning in her wealthy Houston circles, using our story as a cautionary tale. "Everyone gather round," I called, tapping a spoon against my glass. The room quieted, faces turning toward me with warmth instead of calculation. A year ago, this house witnessed attempted destruction. Greed, lies, and manipulation nearly tore apart not just our family, but this physical space Grandma Ruth loved so much. But tonight we're proof that sometimes destruction clears the ground for something better to grow. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Dad raised his glass eyes misty. The Willow Point retreat has helped 14 families navigate inheritance conflicts without destroying each other. The Ruth Summers Memorial Fund has protected 12 elderly property owners from exploitation. This table holds people who chose truth over comfortable lies, accountability over enablement, and real love over the performance of family loyalty. To Grandma Ruth, Marina offered, who knew that leaving the right inheritance to the right person could reveal everyone's true character. To Grandma Ruth, we echoed glasses raised. As dinner progressed, I found myself watching the easy flow of conversation. No hidden agendas, no manipulative subtext, just people who'd learned hard lessons about what really mattered, gathered in gratitude. My phone buzzed with a text I'd been half expecting. Meredith. "Happy Thanksgiving, Alita. Watching the sunrise from my halfway house window and thinking of the lake. Thank you for protecting what I tried to destroy. Maybe next year." I showed it to Dad, who nodded thoughtfully. "Growth takes time. She's got another year before release. We'll see who she becomes." Patricia remained in federal prison unrepentant, based on her continued letters claiming victimhood. But Meredith's journey toward accountability offered a glimmer of hope for eventual reconciliation. Not forgetting, not excusing, but perhaps forgiving if genuine change took root. After dinner, as guests settled into comfortable clusters, I slipped away to Grandma's study. On the desk sat a letter I'd been crafting for weeks, addressed to future generations who might face similar battles. To those who inherit more than property, this house stands because someone valued love over money, truth over perception, and integrity over false peace. You'll face pressure to compromise these values. Family members may weaponize loyalty. Strangers may offer fortunes for what can't be bought. Remember, true family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about those who stand with you when standing costs something. Protect what matters even when protection makes you unpopular. And know that healing happens not through forgetting the battle, but through building something beautiful in the ruins. The sunrise over this lake has witnessed greed and grace, destruction and restoration. Let it remind you daily that what Grandma Ruth knew remains true. We're measured not by what we inherit, but by how we honor what we're given. Alida Summers, Keeper of Willow Point. A knock at the door interrupted my writing. Amy peered in. "We're starting board games. You coming?" "In a moment." She entered, studying the room that had once held evidence of family betrayal. "You know, I used to be jealous that Grandma left you everything. Now I see she left us all exactly what we needed. You got the house, but we got the lesson." "What lesson?" "That choosing right over easy shows everyone's true character. We could have been Meredith believing we deserved what wasn't ours. Instead, we got to choose being better. After she left, I sealed the letter in an envelope marked "For the Next Generation" and placed it in the desk drawer alongside Grandma's journals. Someday, another keeper would need these words. The evening wound down with guests reluctant to leave the warmth of genuine gathering. As I walked them to their cars, each offered thanks, not just for dinner, but for the harder gift, showing them what family could be when stripped of pretense and rebuilt on truth. Finally, only Dad remained helping me clean up. We worked in comfortable silence, the dishwasher humming as we packaged leftovers. "Your mother called me yesterday," he said quietly. "Collect from prison. First time since the divorce." I paused, hands in soapy water. What did she want? To blame me for not stopping her. Said if I'd been a better husband, she wouldn't have needed to steal. He shook his head. I almost feel sorry for her. Imagine being so broken you can't even see your own choices. We finished cleaning as midnight approached. Dad hugged me goodbye at the door, promising lunch Thursday. "Proud of you, kiddo. You didn't just save the house, you saved all of us from becoming people we'd hate." Alone finally, I walked through each room, hope padding beside me. The house felt different now, not heavy with memory but alive with possibility. In the living room, evidence of the evening remained Amy's boys' drawings on the coffee table, Marina's notebook forgotten on the mantel, Caroline's reading glasses left by her chair. Small claims on the space by people who'd earned the right through honesty and growth. The family Grandma had probably hoped for emerging from the ashes of the one she'd known was broken. On the dock under stars reflecting in still water, I thought about everyone absent from tonight's table. Bradley serving 10 years for racketeering. His development firm dissolved in scandal. The relatives who'd chosen comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths now nursing grievances in their own bitter circles. And Meredith watching sunrise from a halfway house, learning who she was without manipulation and schemes. Her text had been the first honest communication we'd shared in years. Maybe there was hope for her yet. A loon called across the water, its haunting sound a reminder of permanence amid change. The Lakehouse had weathered a war for its soul, emerging scarred but victorious. The gardens grew over damaged soil. The heritage oak thrived despite its wounds. And at this table where greed had tried to feast, grace now gathered. "We did it, Grandma," I whispered to the night. "We protected your legacy, not just the property, but what it represents. The radical idea that love, truth, and integrity matter more than money or manipulation." The water lapped gently at the dock, a sound I'd never take for granted. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new families seeking help through the retreat program, new applications for the scholarship fund. But tonight, I stood grateful for the hardest gift. Learning that sometimes loss clears space for what was meant to be. To everyone reading this, facing their own family battles over inheritance property or principle, know this. Standing for truth may cost you the family you thought you had, but it can give you the family you deserve. The price is high. The pain is real. But on the other side, waits something worth every tear. Integrity, peace, and relationships built on bedrock instead of sand. Have you faced similar challenges with family and inheritance? What would you do if protecting what's right meant losing those you love? Share your thoughts below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might need to hear that choosing truth over comfortable lies is worth the cost. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May you find the courage to protect what matters, the strength to withstand the storm, and the wisdom to build something beautiful in the aftermath. Remember, we're not measured by what we inherit, but by how we honor what we're given. With gratitude and hope, Alita.